Welcome back to Birds of a Feather. This is your daily Baltimore sports podcast. My name is Nathan Stroud, and today we've got a lot of stuff to go over with the Orioles and the fact that they got a huge, and I mean huge, series win today over the New York Yankees. The Orioles win today 5-4 over the Yankees. Another close, hard-fought game that they were able to win. Much like Game 1 in the series where it was a close game to the end, this was the exact same thing. This was the rubber match in the series. The Orioles got a huge win. The Orioles win this series 2-1 against the Yankees after a great performance by the bullpen today. Felix Bautista obviously closing out the game in the ninth, getting another save on the season. He's now 5 for 5 in saves, but also home runs from Ramon Urias and Ryan Mountcastle that really led the way for this offense today. And there's a lot to talk about with this. I can't stress enough how important of a series win this was for the Orioles. This was a much-needed series win for them. You know, they needed to go get this win. They've been struggling a lot this year. They're still 6 games below 500, but getting a series win under their belt and then trying to move forward with the momentum and seeing what happens next is going to be very important for them and, you know, moving forward with the team because, again, they got to dig themselves out of the hole that they put themselves in. Let's just go over everything with this game. Again, the Orioles win 5-4 against the Yankees, and they win this series 2-1. Obviously, this is the first of many series matchups that the Orioles and Yankees are going to have this year. Obviously, they're in the same division, which you play them multiple times a year. But of the first series that the Orioles and Yankees played, the Orioles were able to win 2-1 in the series and take the first series against the Yankees, and it's exciting. It's very exciting to see because it's not just like a normal series win. Obviously, this is a divisional series win, and it's also to a team that, you know, just made the World Series last year and is considered the best team in the American League. So, getting a series win against the Yankees is huge for this team, and all you can really hope is that this motivates them for the future and can motivate them going into the next series this weekend against Kansas City. But going over some highlights for today, the Orioles offense was able to put up 10 total hits, scored 5 total runs. The runners in scoring position statistic was not great. They were 1 for 10 with runners in scoring position, so they had opportunities to bring guys in and to build this lead that they had early on even more. So the runners in scoring position for the Orioles still isn't looking great. You know, they're still one of the worst teams in the league with runners in scoring position. And today they didn't do well with that either, but, you know, the pitching was able to, you know, hold off and was able to win. The offense did their thing. The pitching did their thing. It was an all-around complete team win that came down to the wire. But going over some Orioles, some players that they had today on offense. You're looking at Cedric Mullins went 1 for 5. Gunnar Henderson 1 for 4. Adley Rutschman. It's good to see Adley kind of get back on track here recently. He's 2 for 3, and he went 2 for 3 today. Was able to get a multi-hit game. You'd love to see that from Adley again. He started the year off great, then he struggled a lot, and then recently in these past few games he's started to pick it up a little bit. So Adley gets a multi-hit game. Ramon Laureano and Ryan O'Hearn both go hitless. Jackson Holliday gets a hit. Ryan Mountcastle got a huge 2-run home run in the second inning as a part of a 4-run inning that the Orioles had, which we'll go over in just a second. But Ryan Mountcastle got a big 2-run homer. Heston Kjerstad had a multi-hit game as well with 2 hits. And Ramon Urias also had a multi-hit game, and he had a solo home run as well. But something that I really want to highlight with this Orioles offense is that in the first inning of the game, top of the first inning, Cade Povich was pitching. He gives up a hit to Trent Grisham, and then he gives up a 2-run home run to Aaron Judge in the first inning. So the Orioles go down 2-0 because of an Aaron Judge homer, and you're sitting there and thinking, okay, well, are we just going to get him tomorrow? Because we've seen in the past when, especially this season, when a team goes out there and puts up, multiple runs in the first or second inning, that the Orioles offense has had a very hard time being able to respond and come back in games and end up winning those games. But that was kind of the complete opposite today for the Orioles because the Yankees went out and scored 2 runs in the first inning. It was an early deficit for the Orioles, another early deficit for the Orioles because of these starting pitching issues. But when we got to the second inning, the Orioles went out there and scored 4 runs in the bottom of the second inning. That accounted for 4 of the 5 total runs that they scored today. And yeah, so Orioles were down 2-0, and then all of a sudden, going into the third inning, they were up 4-2. And once they got that lead in the second inning, they held on to it for the rest of the game. Shout out to the pitching with that. But that second inning, we got home runs from Ramon Urias and Ryan Mountcastle that fueled that fire. And so the pitching was a big part of this game because they were the guys that were able to hold this lead for the O's. The offense kind of died down after the second inning. They only scored 1 run the rest of the game, which they scored in the 5th inning. But the pitching, especially the bullpen, was really just able to hold this lead for the Orioles. Going over to the pitching, Cade Povich was the starter for today. He didn't have a great game, but he also didn't have like the worst game ever. He got through 4.2 innings, gave up 3 hits, 3 runs, had 3 walks, only 2 strikeouts, and did give up 2 home runs. And those 2 home runs were to Paul Goldschmidt and Aaron Judge. But an 87 pitch count across 4.2 innings isn't great. The only 3 runs given up isn't horrible. The hits and the runs given up isn't horrible. But you would have liked to see Cade Povich at least get into the 6th inning and, see if he could maybe push for 6 innings. But he wasn't even able to get 5 innings in this game. Not the worst game by him, not the best game by him. But, I mean, you take what you get from Cade Povich. And at least with this starting pitching that you have, you just kind of got to take what you get. And just move on with it. But after we pulled Cade Povich, Seranthony Dominguez came in there for 0.1 innings, gave up a hit. Keegan Aiken goes 1 inning, 2 hits, it gives up a run. But after Keegan Aiken gives up that run, it was 5-2. After Keegan Aiken gave up that run, it was 5-3 Orioles. And that was the last earned run that was given up this game, was from Keegan Aiken. He gave that up in the 7th inning. And then from there, we went to Yennier Cano, who didn't give up a run. Then Gregory Soto, who did his thing. Brian Baker went out and did his thing in the 8th inning. Brian Baker had a huge 8th inning. He was hyped up. You could see the energy on his face. You could see the energy with the team and in the crowd. Brian Baker did actually get the win as well in this game. He's 2-0. He's been credited for 2 wins this year and hasn't been credited for a loss. So shout out Brian Baker. He's had a great year so far for the O's out of the bullpen. He goes 1 inning, gives up a walk, but also 2 strikeouts. And then Felix Bautista gets his 5th save of the season. He goes 1 inning, no hits, no runs, no walks, and gets a strikeout. A perfect inning for Felix Bautista, who is 5 for 5 in save opportunities. So Felix Bautista, again, starting to heat up again. In Game 1 of this series, where the Orioles won 4-3, Felix Bautista was able to close the door on that game, and he was also able to close the door on this game as well, as the Orioles took the first series of the year against New York. The first series against New York, not the first series of the year, obviously, but the first one against New York. And this is only the 2nd series win that the Orioles have had all year. The only other series win the Orioles had going into this game was against Cleveland, where they took 2 out of 3. But thankfully, they go in, whether at home in Baltimore, they go and take 2 out of 3 versus the Yankees. A huge, huge, huge series win. Like, words can't even describe how big of a series win this was. They needed this because they put themselves in a hole. They were 11-18 going into this game. If they lost this game, they would have been 11-19 and 8 games under 500. And it wouldn't even have been May yet. And obviously May is tomorrow. Happy May, everybody. But it's still, you don't want to put yourself in a hole this early in the year. And the Orioles are still in a hole. There is still a lot of work to be done with this Orioles team to get out of this hole and to eventually get their season back on track. One series win isn't going to, save their season, but it could potentially and hopefully be the start of a little bit of a run that these guys could go on. Hopefully they could go on a little bit of run from here. They have a weekend series against Kansas City this weekend, this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They have an off day tomorrow. But, if they can go and beat Kansas City in that series, taking 2 out of 3 or even sweeping that series, hopefully sweeping that series. Obviously, you have to hope for that. You kind of just have to ride this momentum. Maybe all it takes is just a series win for the Orioles to get back on track. Obviously, there is still a ton of injuries with this team, both on offense and on, the pitching side. But, they're going to have to try and maneuver through it and figure it out. And this is where we're going to really see the passion and strength of this team. Can they dig themselves out of this hole even with the injuries that they have around them, even with how much they've been getting ridiculed online and, people calling for Brandon Hyde's head and Mike Elias's head and all this stuff like that. Can they dig themselves out of this hole, put themselves in a decent position to when, whenever Grace Rodriguez comes back, hopefully, or Kyle Bradish, or, some guys out of the bullpen, and then with the bats, when Jordan Westberg and Colton Cowser come back, by the time that those guys come back, hopefully they won't be in a super horrible position, and then they can maybe get back on track, and then at this point, hopefully, just get into the playoffs. That would be a dream as of right now, just because of the way the Orioles season is gone. That would seem like a miracle, but all you can do is just hope for the best. Again, this was only the second series win the Orioles had. There's still a ton of work to be done, but one thing that happened earlier today that Brandon Hyde addressed the media and told everybody today, which was very good, because I think this was the right decision to make, was that we officially have moved Charlie Morton to the bullpen full-time. At least for the time being, he is going to be in the bullpen moving forward throughout this season. Obviously, we signed him for $15 million to be a starting pitcher and a guy that can go out there and eat innings for us, and he has not done that at all. He's been probably the worst starting pitcher in baseball, but we are moving him to the bullpen. We're going to see that if he can maybe settle down there, and then maybe eventually, hopefully not, but, eventually maybe the plan is to move him back to the starting lineup. But it was really interesting, Brandon Hyde saying that, because he said that they're moving they said that they're moving Charlie Morton over to the bullpen full-time moving forward. And we saw Charlie Morton, he was in the bullpen yesterday in the loss against the Yankees, and he didn't play amazing. He got through 2 innings, but he had a pretty big pitch count. He didn't give up any runs, but he did play better, at least, than what he did play as a starter. So maybe just taking a little bit of pressure off of him is going to be the thing that's going to help. And just putting him in low leverage situations in games just to try and get him back on track. I don't know if you can get him back on track. I don't know if it's too late to save that. But at the same time, you got to do what you got to do. I think it's a smart decision. Obviously, everybody, including me, would have just wanted to DFA Morton and just get him off the team. But at the same time, I mean, you sign this guy for a lot of money, and he does bring some veteran experience. But I will say, in his appearances that he's going to have in the bullpen, if he does come out of the bullpen and do the same thing he did when he was starting, and he just gets put in a lot of traffic and he just doesn't do well and he's letting up runs or letting a lot of guys on base like he did when he was a starter, then I could see us DFAing him and cutting him. But I think right now we're just going to see how he does out of the bullpen. Hopefully he can play better. It really couldn't get any worse than what he played, but I think that the rotation as it stands right now is obviously Tomoyuki Sugano, Dean Kramer, Tomoyuki Sugano, Dean Kramer, Cade Povich, Kyle Gibson, and then I don't really know who the fifth guy is going to be. But the thing that was interesting about Brandon Hyde saying that about Charlie Morton is I think that he is hopeful that Zach Eflin's going to be coming back soon. Because if Zach Eflin can come back soon, and you also don't have Charlie Morton in your starting pitching rotation, then the rotation all becomes obviously Eflin is your one guy, Eflin, then Tomoyuki, then probably Kramer, Povich, and then Kyle Gibson is your 5 guy. Obviously Kyle Gibson had a horrible first start, but I want to see how he does in his second start this weekend before I can truly judge everything about that signing. Obviously, it was a horrendous first start, but, we'll see what he can do against Kansas City this weekend because he is getting the start on Sunday, I believe. But yeah, so the rotation hopefully is going to be getting its help soon. We'll see what happens, but they just got to stay in line. They got to stay afloat as much as they can, and they just got to fight as much as they can as well. But looking at, forward to this Kansas City Royals series that's coming up, so it is a weekend series, and this series is also going to be at home. So we're staying in Baltimore for the series. The first game is going to be Kramer versus Michael Wacha. Then it's going to be Tomoyuki Sagano versus Bubic. And then it's going to be Kyle Gibson versus Cole Reagans. So the pitching matchups are going to be interesting. For the Orioles, it's going to be Kramer, Sagano, and Gibson. So I'm really looking at the Kramer game and the Sagano game. I would love to see us go out and win the first two games of the series, so they can just go out, win the first two games, get the series win out of the way. So if they do end up losing with Cal Gibson pitching, at least they would have taken the first two, so they got the series win. Because obviously the Orioles need to get wins, but they got to focus series by series, game by game, and just move forward with it. Because they got a hole to crawl. They have to crawl themselves out of a hole. But if you look at this upcoming record for the Orioles, this Kansas City series obviously is going to be a little bit difficult because Kansas City is a good team. They have some great players on there. But then you got Minnesota, who's been struggling a lot this year. Then you got the Angels, who's also been struggling a lot. And then you have Minnesota again. And then Washington. So you have teams that are not playing necessarily amazing. You're not playing any juggernaut of teams. Obviously, you just played one in New York and won that series. But hopefully they can go out and just go on a little bit of like a run, maybe go like 6-4 or 7-3 in their next 10 games, and just ride that momentum forward and just see what they can do, because that's all it's going to take to get back into the season. But thank you guys so much for tuning into and listening to this episode of Birds of a Feather. Whether you're on Spotify or YouTube, I appreciate all of the support and all the streams. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube if you like this content, and follow up on Spotify as well. And I'll be back again tomorrow. There's not going to be a game tomorrow. I think we're going to do some discussions about the Ravens tomorrow. And we might talk about the Orioles a little bit as well. There's no games tomorrow for the Orioles, so it's going to be a bit of a little bit of an off day, but I'm still going to have an episode out tomorrow. We're going to be going over something. We'll see what happens. We'll see if any news comes out as well regarding the Orioles or the Ravens. But obviously, weekend series this weekend against Kansas City is going to be a big one. We're going to have episodes out all weekend and episodes out daily, because obviously this is your daily Baltimore sports podcast. So again, thank you guys for all the support. I appreciate you guys a lot, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.